Hello and welcome to Solar Alberta's 2023 Solar Show. This is our last webinar of the show. We do have a networking event this evening, but welcome to our last webinar of the show. Today's session is called Electric Vehicles 101. Please note that we have enabled closed captioning for this presentation. You can turn the captioning on in the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will be recording this session and making it available on our website and YouTube channel following the show. My name is Heather McKenzie and I am the Executive Director at Solar Alberta. I just want to take a minute to acknowledge that I am hosting you today from Amiskwaciwaskahegan, also known as Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, which is located on Treaty 6 territory and the homelands of the Métis Nation. Treaty 6 territory is the traditional gathering place and home of many Indigenous peoples, including the Papaches, Nehewak or Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, and Nakota Sioux, as well as Blackfoot. Nations whose ancestors have cared for and nurtured these lands since time immemorial. We were delighted to have so many people register for this week and for this event in particular. To start, I want to give a huge shout out of thanks to the City of Edmonton Change for Climate for sponsoring the 2023 Solar Show, and to Solus Energy for sponsoring this exciting session today. We're happy and grateful to have them both once again as the sponsors. Today, we're going to be hearing from William York with our partner, the Electric Vehicle Association of Alberta. Following his presentation, there's going to be a Q&A, a question and answer period in which you can all participate. The entire session will wrap up in about an hour. As this is an online conference and trade show, I'd like to encourage you all to check out our online trade show during the week. We have listed on this slide and in the chat all the wonderful organizations who are participating. To view their exhibitor booths, which include a listing of key solar-related services, contact info, and video introductions, please click on the link in the chat. During our formal Q&A period, we'll be using Zoom Q&A for questions rather than the chat box, so please enter your questions in the Q&A section. Please also click on the little thumbs up symbols to upvote questions you like. Before we move forward, we're going to do a quick poll to just get a sense of who we have joining us today. Please take a minute to answer the question popping up on your screen now. Thank you very much. While some are still doing the poll, I encourage you also to pop your name, land acknowledgement, any contact info as well that you're comfortable sharing in the chat. You can do that now or throughout the event. It's great for folks to be able to look you up on LinkedIn or email you and begin to form relationships. All right, I think we can end that poll, and this is sort of what we were expecting for today. So lots of curious folks in the audience. We will try our best to spell out all those acronyms, but I think it's so safe to say EV for those of you. Everybody will hopefully know that means electric vehicle. But yeah, nice to see some industry folks here as well as students. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. All right, a little bit about Solar Alberta. We are now in our 32nd year of operation. We are a nonprofit society that is dedicated to accelerating Alberta's transition to a just and sustainable energy future. We do so by advocating, by educating, and by serving as an industry and community hub for solar energy and related technologies. Our membership is made up of over 360 individuals and businesses. So to keep up to date on all our activities, please sign up for our newsletter at solaralberta.ca, and you can find us on social media as well. We provide a number of services, including managing a solar directory through our website. In this way, we act as a bridge for installers, suppliers, and other solar-related businesses to connect with their customers and clients. You can see a screenshot of the directory here on this slide and a link to it in the chat. In addition to our website services, we run a number of educational programs such as this solar show, our seminar series, and a number of in-person and online networking events as well. Our next online networking event is for women and non-binary folks working or interested in working in the solar sector. We are going to be hosting that on March 8th over the lunch hour to celebrate International Women's Day. We're going to be hearing from Pembina's Benu Jekumar about her experience at COP27 prior to our networking component. The registration link for that is being popped in the chat now. Please note that recordings of the 2021 and 2022 Solar Show sessions and seminars can also be found on our Solar Alberta YouTube channel. Very busy this spring. In addition to some solar show workshops that are industry oriented, we will once again be running a number of online courses for solar industry professionals or those transitioning into the sector. Our 7 courses are online Tuesday and Thursday evenings on 3 to 5 nights over 2 to 3 weeks. You can already register for all of our courses at the link provided in the chat. Recordings of these courses are also available alongside our paid workshops in the new solar training video section of our website. Just want to take this opportunity to encourage you to join Solar Alberta as a member. This week only, so today is the last day, you can purchase an individual or student membership with a 20% discount. The link to become a member is also being placed in the chat. On April 5th, we will be hosting our annual general meeting, and I'd like to invite you all to sign up as members, attend, and elect your new board. There are 4 vacancies to fill on the board this year. So if you're interested in applying to serve, and you don't have to be a solar expert, you can do so through our website until February 26th. All right, we are happy to announce that moving forward, we're going to be recognizing some longtime dedicated contributors to solar in Alberta by gifting them a free lifetime Solar Alberta membership. If you are currently a Solar Alberta individual or business member and you know someone who has contributed significantly to the organization or the sector as a whole, please consider nominating them for this award. We're accepting nominations until March 22nd, and the award recipients will be announced at our AGM. And the last slide from me today, we are just asking that you please consider participating in our 50-50 raffle. It's up over $1,100 now, and today is the last day. Ticket sales will be closing this evening, and then I'm going to do the draw live at 8 p.m. during the Stories from Solar Sector Workers and Networking Night. But you don't actually have to be there to be the winner. We can always email you if you're the winner and not in attendance. Additionally, please consider donating through the crowdfunding link in the chat. The Government of Alberta is matching all donations made through this link until the end of today as well. And now I'm delighted to get this session underway by introducing Maureen Kola of Solus Energy, our sponsor for the day. Maureen will tell us a little about Solus Energy and then introduce our speaker. Welcome, Maureen. Thanks for joining us again.
Thanks, Heather, and thanks for the introduction. Hello, everybody, and welcome. As Heather said, I am Maureen Kola, and I'm Director of Grid Modernization and ESG at Solus Energy. Solus Energy is proud to be sponsoring this solar show session. We provide comprehensive strategy and consulting services for renewable energy development and emerging solutions to support the energy transition throughout Canada and the US. In addition to supporting technologies like wind, energy storage, and commercial and utility scale solar, Solus Energy supports the electric vehicle market as well. We follow EV market trends, government policies and incentives, and help organizations decarbonize their fleets. This is all done in an effort to help move towards Canada's goal of being net zero carbon emissions by 2035. Each quarter, Solus Energy hosts a free webinar where we provide updates on the EV market. As it happens, it's great timing. Our next webinar will be held next week on Wednesday, February 15th at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Once I'm introduced William, I will add a link into the chat with the registration. You can also register if you're interested on Solus Energy's website at www.solusenergy.com. We hope you'll join us as we share EV trends in our region. We have some exciting updates about electric options within the construction equipment industry, and also provide an update on our database of EV passenger, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles in Canada. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope you will enjoy today's EV 101 workshop. So now let me introduce today's speaker. William York graduated with distinction from the University of Alberta with a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering in 2013. Since then, William has held numerous roles in the electric utility industry, working for ATCO Electric. Today, he is a senior engineer of EV services and has installed much of the province's fast charging infrastructure through ATCO. He also sits on the board of the Electric Vehicle Association of Alberta, a nonprofit organization whose goal is to accelerate the adoption of sustainable transportation by raising awareness and educating Albertans. William is also an EV owner, having himself driven more than 90,000 pure electric kilometers since 2019, or 2018, my apologies. So William, I will now pass the mic over to you to begin your presentation.
Thank you, Maureen. Let me just share my screen now. And if I could just get confirmation that you can see my screen.
Yep, looking good.
Okay, thank you, and welcome to my presentation. I'm just going to blow through the background on EVAA because Maureen did such a fantastic job introducing our organization. I want to do a special call out to our supporters, including Solar Alberta and Fortis Alberta, who just recently became a supporter of EVAA. I'm going to blast through this too because Maureen did a great job there. Although I should update that I've now passed the 95,000 electric kilometers mark, so that's a good update. Okay, so this is the car, the electric vehicle that I drive. It's a 2018 Tesla Model 3 long range. Long range stands for the battery size that's in it, so it's a rear-wheel drive vehicle. The motor is on the rear axle. It's a 75 kilowatt hour battery, so that's how much electrical energy it can hold. It does about 525 kilometers per full charge. It's a quick vehicle. It gets from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in about 5 seconds. And like any standard electric vehicle, it comes with an 8-year battery and drivetrain warranty or 80,000 kilometer bumper to bumper warranty. So if you're contemplating ownership of an electric vehicle as a daily driver, I can tell you that it is the best commuter vehicle ever. So it checks all these boxes. It has the range that you need, even if it's a minus 45 degrees Celsius day. If you're like any other Albertan or Canadian, you have about a 50 kilometer per day round trip commute. Any EV on the market meets that criteria. They are very quiet to drive. They are very smooth to drive. Your home is your gas station. They are safe, cheap, reliable, convenient. And in the wintertime, they get instantaneous heat and they can keep you always warm. So just talking about range a little bit, I live in the southwest side of Edmonton, and this is a heat map essentially of where I drive since I own the vehicle. So you can tell that the darker blue is where I mostly drive, and as it gets more lighter blue, those are some infrequent trips for me. But what I wanted to point out with this graphic is that I have never needed to use a charging station in Edmonton other than the one that is in my garage. Have I used charging stations in Edmonton? Yes, I have. I use them frequently when they're free, but I've never needed to use one. So a question we always get at the EVAA is, yeah, I would buy an electric vehicle, but where would I charge it? Well, you charge it at home. This is a graph of the torque curve for an electric vehicle and a gas-powered vehicle. And so the gas-powered vehicle is shown in red there, and you can see there are 5 separate curves. Well, that's a curve for each gear of the gas-powered vehicle. And this results in a very jerky and not very smooth driving experience. So you shift from first gear to second, and there's a kind of lag in the torque of the vehicle. And that results in not a smooth driving experience. But when you drive an electric vehicle, it's very hard to convey by describing it, but it is the most linear and smooth and satisfying driving experience that I can possibly describe. They're also very quiet. So this is actually from an electric motor coach manufacturer, and they put a sound recorder inside one of the cabin of their motor coach, and they recorded the decibel difference between their gas-powered vehicles and their electric motor coach. And you can just see the results here that they're order of magnitudes more quiet on the inside, and that translates to a more pleasant driving experience. One of the biggest value propositions for electric vehicle ownership is the fact that your home is now your gas station. And I always like to joke that the bathrooms are much, much nicer at home, obviously. So breaking down charging a little bit more, there are 3 levels of charging with electric vehicles. Level 1 is off your standard 120 volt outlet that you would plug your toaster or your television into. EVAA largely considers this to be a last resort, or it's only a good application longitudinally if you live in a parkade, if you park your vehicle in a parkade or a heated garage. Because in the winter time, in the very, very depths of winter, when it's very cold, level 1 doesn't provide enough electrical energy to both heat your battery and charge it at the same time. Then there's level 2, and this operates at about 240 volts and 30 amps. It's very similar power draw to your electric stove or your electric dryer. And what we say with level 2 is overnight, you're always fine. No matter if your vehicle is fully depleted or you only did your daily commute, no matter what, with level 2, you will wake up to a full battery in the morning. And then there's level 3, and this is also called DC fast charging, or DCFC. And with this charging methodology, you will be back on the road within 10 to 30 minutes at conventional fast charging stations. And so we like to say that you level 1 and 2 at home and at hotels, and you level 3 when you're on the road. Just breaking down the installation of a level 2 charger in your home, there's a bunch of questions that we need to ask. So on the left-hand side, you have a detached garage. This is actually an image of my home in Edmonton. And you can see that I park in the rear, so I have a detached garage. And quite often in this situation, your electrical panel is attached to the home, the proper home, and your panel is located in the basement. So you have to ask questions like, is the basement finished? That makes the installation, the routing of the electrical wires to the garage a bit more complicated. Is there landscaping between the home and the garage? That would make the installation of an underground cable a little more challenging. And then the placement of the charger. We spoke to the city of Edmonton. They used to have a charging program where they would subsidize the cost to install a charging station. And we found that the cost can vary from about $1,000 to $4,000 all in. So that would be supply and installation of the charging station, but the average is about $2,000. On the right-hand side of this image, you can see an attached garage. That's a much simpler routing option, especially if the panel is located just underneath the basement, underneath the garage, essentially. That means that the distance between the panel is very short, and it's not much work for an electrician to bridge the two. These are the general steps. So you would, number 1, contact an electrician. An electrician would do a site visit and prepare an estimate. We always recommend that you consider seeking a second estimate to compare the installers. And then that electrician that you selected will pull an electrical permit from the municipality with jurisdiction. The installation doesn't take very long. It's usually 1 to 2 days. Then it gets inspected. Sometimes there's a rough inspection and then a final inspection and then energization. And please note that if step 2 results in the electrician finding that you have insufficient electrical capacity, don't panic. There are alternatives. And in the top right-hand corner of this slide, we have a newspaper clipping from an Edmonton article where a customer was given a $45,000 estimate to upgrade their panel. And that is not what you need to do in many cases. Bottom right-hand corner of this slide, this is a EV energy management system. And essentially this circumvents the part of the code that your electrician was bumping up against. And this allows you to install an EV charging station in your home without having to do a service panel upgrade. And so this will save you a lot of money. I mean, you won't have to spend $45,000 for this. This device only costs about $500 to $1,000. And then the installation is quite trivial. Another reason to like electric vehicles is that they are quite safe. So this is called the skateboard deck design. So essentially the battery is the floor of the vehicle and it spans from the front axle where the front wheels are to the rear axle. And then you have the electric motor and whatnot as well. And what this results in is an extremely rigid chassis where the occupants of the vehicle are. And so in a front end collision, you can see that there's nothing but space there in the front of that vehicle. And this is what makes electric vehicles very, very safe. So the NHTSA, the National Highway and Traffic Safety Administration in the United States, tests all cars that are available in the United States. And they have found that this is a little bit cherry picked data from for Tesla. I apologize, I don't have other manufacturers' data at hand. But and this data is a little bit old. It was produced before Tesla was producing their fourth vehicle, the Tesla Model Y. But you can see that of the top 50 vehicles tested by the NHTSA since 2011, the 3 that were manufactured by Tesla at the time of this test were the safest vehicles that they had tested. The lowest probability of injury were all electric vehicles. It wasn't the fact that they were manufactured by Tesla. It was the fact that they were electric. And this skateboard deck design is the reason. Okay, so they are cheap and reliable as well. In Alberta, you will pay all in roughly 10 to 20 cents per kilowatt hour. And using my vehicle as an example, I have a 75 kilowatt hour battery. Doing the math there, you multiply 75 by 0.1 or 0.2, and you get $7 to $15 per fill, quote unquote. And that means that it costs me it will cost an Albertan driving my vehicle anywhere from $7 to $15 to drive 525 kilometers. It is remarkably cheap to drive an electric vehicle, even in Alberta. On top of that, there are no oil changes. The only maintenance you really can expect with these is topping up your windshield fluid, your wiper blades, cabin filters, and of course, tires. And then after a couple 100,000 kilometers of driving, of course, you will probably have to replace steering and suspension components as those normally wear out with any vehicle. The reason why EVs have less maintenance than a gas-powered vehicle is quite simply the fact that they have 1/10 the number of moving parts, and they're just simpler. And so you have less potential points of failure. And I estimate that after owning my vehicle for about 10 years, I will have saved about $20,000 in fuel costs alone. And while it is true that EVs are upfront more expensive to purchase, in the long run, if you do keep them long enough, they will start to provide a savings. And keep in mind that as years progress, that cost premium of buying an electric vehicle or an equivalent gas-powered vehicle will continue to shrink. And we predict, and many industry experts do as well, that the average electric vehicle will cost much less in the long term than its gas-powered equivalent. Another thing to mention is that they're so convenient and they're always warm. So I can preheat my vehicle. This is a couple screenshots from the mobile app that comes with my vehicle. I can preheat it in my garage with the garage door down. I don't have to worry about carbon monoxide poisoning. The heat is instantaneous in an electric vehicle, just like getting your heat out of a hairdryer. There are no exhaust fumes. And plugging in takes 5 seconds. I come home from my day of work at 6 o'clock, I plug it in and I walk away. And in the morning, I come back to it, unplug it and drive. It's so convenient to own an electric vehicle. And on that convenience front, a lot of people talk about, yeah, but what about when you're on a road trip? So I'd like to break this down logically for folks. Before I do that. So I'm going to assume with this thought experiment that it takes about 10 minutes to drive to the gas station and fill up the tank, and you do 2 fill-ups per month. And then I'm also going to assume with the electric vehicle that it takes about 20 minutes per fast charge. And let's plot this out. So when you're an owner of a gas vehicle, you have to spend that time there. There's no way around it. So throughout the year, you are wasting precious minutes at gas stations. But if you drive an electric vehicle, since it only takes 5 seconds to plug in, you're only really wasting your time on recharging when you are on a road trip. So I plotted that out. In January, you don't do any road trips. By February, you take a road trip to Calgary, and that resulted in you waiting at a fast charger for, I think I assumed 60 minutes or something like that. And then in July, you decide to take a road trip to BC and you incur some more fast charging time. And what we have to look at is by the end of the year in December, how much time would you have theoretically spent at a gas station over a fast charger? And, you know, if you did this, you would save 2.3 hours per year being an EV owner. And if you don't take any road trips, you save 4.5 hours per year, not wasted at gas stations. On that road trip front, I want to go back to the checklist boxes that I had before. And I do want to call out some deficiencies or areas of concern for an electric vehicle. And number one would be the range. So we can no longer make that 50-kilometer a day round trip check mark. And we can't really rely on the home gas station anymore. So let's break that down a little bit more. If you are contemplating EV ownership, spring a little bit extra cash for the long range model. That will get you, you know, if you're a heavy road tripper, that will create some breathing room. And the fast charging infrastructure is getting faster. When I started out as an EV owner, fast chargers were only about 120 kilowatts. And today they are getting up to 350 kilowatts, which means that I'm getting back on the road quicker. Before I was waiting about 25 minutes to get back on the road. Today, I frequently travel to Calgary in my electric vehicle, and I stop at Red Deer at the fast charger there for only about 10 minutes on average. In addition to that, the fast charging infrastructure is growing, and in a couple of slides, I will show you that. It's more expensive than at home, but it's still cheaper than gas. You can find free charging at hotels and other places. It does require planning, but there are numerous digital tools to help you with that. And I also like the fact that it forces you to stop and recharge your batteries. So we are all biological organisms. We need to use the washroom. We need to stretch our legs. And I think that doing a 10-hour road trip with only a 5-minute stop for gas is not a healthy way to do it. You're certainly free to do it, but I actually do like the fact that when I'm on a road trip, this actually forces me to stop and take some time for myself. So that same heat map that I showed you earlier, this is one with zoomed out of Edmonton. You can see that I take my electric vehicle many places, Jasper, Lloydminster, Banff and Canmore and Pincher Creek and Brooks, Alberta. I've even taken it all the way to Seattle, though unfortunately my tracker was down at the time, so we can't show that lovely drive on here. But I take my electric vehicle a lot of places. Will I have difficulty going north of Edmonton? Absolutely. Do I think that's a temporary problem? Absolutely. So here's one of those resources that I was telling you about. This is it's called plugshare.com. And each of the orange markers that we see on this screen is a DC fast charger or a level 3 charger for an electric vehicle. So if you're contemplating EV ownership, consult this resource. All the green markers on the map, those are level 2 chargers. And actually, the way this GIS system works for this tool, if you zoom into Edmonton, you'll actually see that Edmonton is covered in level 2 chargers, covered in these green markers. So it's doing a little bit of visualization help so that you can make sense of the information that's visually being presented to you. So there actually are many more level 2 chargers than this shows, and they show up when you zoom in. As I said before, hotels often have level 2 charging, and it's complementary in a lot of cases. So this is a level 2 charger at Jasper at the Fairmont, and they don't charge you for it. They don't even check if you're a hotel guest. So you can get creative and just stay there for the day and take advantage of their wonderful brunch and get some free electrons. There are numerous other benefits that I'd like to call out. So if I've talked to many EV owners, and I'm surprised at the things that they tell me. So I never use drive-throughs. I think they're frankly stupid, but people use them, and some people feel guilt while they're using them, and they see all these emissions spewing into the air. And I've talked to a lot of EV owners that actually say that they do this now without guilt, which is, it was a very surprising benefit of ownership that I discovered that I didn't experience myself, but I thought was noteworthy. This is something I do experience. So I like to buy and sell things on sites like Kijiji and Facebook Marketplace. And prior to owning an electric vehicle, I was not I didn't offer delivery. I usually force folks to come to my place. And now that I drive so cheaply, I often offer free delivery because it really doesn't cost me that much to drive anywhere within the city limits. So, and then this is another interesting benefit of owning an electric vehicle. So if you, let's say it's January and you need to do some shop work in your garage, you can actually use your electric vehicle as a garage heater. I've done this before. I helped a friend with an installation of a charging station in their garage. They bought a second electric vehicle and they wanted to install a second charging station for the second vehicle. And it was in the depths of winter. It was -40 out and their garage was freezing. And we rolled down the windows on his electric vehicle and we just ran the heater full blast. And within, I think within 30 minutes, the garage was suitable to work in. And then you lower local air pollution, which I think, being a winter city, I think this is something we are all very acutely aware of in the deepest depths of winter. When it's very cold out, the exhaust from your car doesn't really rise to the atmosphere as quickly. It kind of hovers around, and if you're in dense traffic, you kind of notice that smell. That is slowly poisoning you. And I just like the fact that in a pure electric future, we aren't going to have this poisonous gas in and around our vehicles all day, every day as we drive around and do our business. Even as we're walking in dense downtown scenarios, dense urban scenarios, you know, a tailpipe from a vehicle is just a couple feet away from your airways. And it's bad for your health. It's been confirmed by the World Health Organization and numerous studies that there are pollutants in vehicle exhaust that cause cancer and lower life expectancy. Because this is EVs 101, I do have to touch on battery longevity, and I'm just going to do a time check on myself to see how I'm doing. Seems like I'm doing okay. So as I stated before, the batteries have a 200,000 kilometer or 8-year warranty, but they're rated for 500,000 kilometers and higher. Essentially, the battery technology keeps getting better and better. And it is not appropriate to compare an iPhone battery to an electric vehicle battery. And I always say that this is like comparing your Honda VTEC engine in your car to a Honda lawnmower. Like a battery does not equal, an iPhone battery equals a lawnmower, whereas a Tesla battery equals that Honda VTEC engine. They're made with different engineering tolerances, uniform manufacturing, better materials. There's an image there from a vehicle that belongs to a taxi fleet in, I believe it's California or Kelowna, I'm not sure. But that vehicle achieved 300,000 miles in less than 2 years on its original battery pack. So these batteries can last a long time. We always say at the EVAA that effectively the battery will outlive the body in many of these vehicles. A lot of people say, yeah, but our grid is powered off of fossil fuels. So really, how much better is it? And we always say that numbers matter. And we got so tired of this argument that we actually created a calculator. The link to it is at the bottom of this slide. It's if you just type thegrid.albertaev.ca into a web browser. This is a calculator that calculates how clean it is to drive an electric vehicle on Alberta's quote unquote dirty grid, and then compares it to an equivalent gas vehicle, or you can compare it to any vehicle, honestly. You could use the drop down there to compare it to an F-150 if you would like. And we find that consistently, especially as Alberta's grid keeps getting cleaner, EV on Alberta's grid emits about 70% less GHGs than its gas equivalent in the same class. So if you're comparing a Tesla Model 3 long range, my vehicle, to a BMW 330 iX, on a EV, you're going to be emitting about 6.58 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent per 100 kilometers. In a BMW, it's 21.5. Now, the thing about that 21.5, it only gets worse over time. But the 6.58 in the Tesla, that will continue to get better throughout time. Coal will be gone from our grid by the end of this year. Good riddance. Solar installations and wind installations continue to be installed at a grid scale in Alberta. So this number will only get cleaner. And I think someday we will see 90% reduction, perhaps even more, as our grid continues to decarbonize. And I'm not an enemy of the fossil fuel industry. The natural gas providers, they are looking at interesting things like hydrogen blending and carbon capture to lower their greenhouse gas emissions associated with their generation on the grid. We also get asked quite often how the grid will fare with mass adoption of electric vehicles. So I'm going to break this down for you. There are different segments of the electricity grid. You have the generation, marked with an A here. B, transmission, that takes very high voltage electricity and transmits it long distances. It goes to a substation where it gets stepped down into the distribution system, marked with C. And then from the distribution system, it gets transmitted at lower voltages, shorter distances, where it finally goes to your home and gets stepped down to a usable voltage for your home electronics. Now, the ISO, the Alberta Electric System Operator, is on the record stating that A and B will be fine in their test case scenarios with widespread electric vehicle adoption. So we don't have to worry about that. I work for company C, and we are actively exploring this right now. To tell you the truth, the electricity grid growing and power demand growing is nothing new to our industry. Back in the earliest days of electricity, electrical panels in homes were 60 amps. And then in the 70s and 80s, you started seeing 100 amp become more popular. Today it's commonplace. And even now today, we're seeing 200 amps in larger homes. And it seems to be, the industry seems to be moving to that moving forward. So we didn't have electric ranges back in the early days of electricity. We didn't have computers. We didn't have air conditioning systems. All those things are becoming more popular. And now guess what? Electric vehicles are too. So this is just a continuation of the growth story that's always happened in the electricity industry. I'm not severely worried about this. That's my opinion, not the opinion of my company, but I think we'll be fine. When you bought your last gas-powered vehicle, did you ask about the adequacy of the global supply of petroleum products? You probably didn't. That's because very smart people and businesses are looking into this and they've got your back. So I wouldn't worry about it. I'm pretty much done my presentation now. I'm ready for Q&A. I have more slides, but these are more Q&A type slides. So I think we're ready to jump into the Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you, William. And there are loads of questions, so I appreciate you making time for that. All right, I'm going to pop into the questions. I want to remind everyone in the audience that if you have questions, you need to put them in the Q&A box because we aren't going to be pulling from the chat for this. So please do upvote each other's questions. I'm going to try and pull from those that are voted for the most. Lots of great questions coming in. Yeah, it's interesting to hear your own personal story as well, William. I do have a Hyundai, and we're actually in the process of increasing our solar array to match our new consumption from our Ioniq 5. Very exciting. We're going to be going from our 7 kilowatt system to about, I think about 5 kilowatts more, 4 or 5 more for that. And nice to be able to generate some of that energy here at home, and like you said, use our home as the as the gas station. So I like that idea. All right, Gordon's question has popped to the top. Do you have any comments about vehicle to home or vehicle to grid concepts? So I think the whole idea of using your electric vehicle as a battery, you know, is really taking off, especially with the Ford Lightning coming into the market. A lot of people are thinking about how that vehicle component can play into the system at home and to the grid as well. Please do comment freely.
Vehicle to home and vehicle to load. Every year I see more and more stories about this disaster hit this state in the United States or this province in Canada, and the owner of the electric vehicle was able to run an extension cord essentially from their from their electric vehicle to their fridge and their furnace and keep their house warm and their groceries from spoiling. When the grid goes down, the natural gas system still works, so you can still power your furnace and keep your home warm, which is a really cool thing. I think vehicle to home is awesome. It is expensive, so you do need to install a, I believe it's called a transfer switch, where it doesn't backfeed into the grid and therefore pose a risk to the utility workers. But costs aside, I think it is a very cool technology. Vehicle to grid, I think it's interesting. Utilities struggle with the concept of how do we make this attractive for both us and for the participants that own the electric vehicle. If you think about the battery in your vehicle, that is your precious asset. That is you paid the most amount of money for that of any component in your car. And when you give a utility access to it to perform grid functions like peak shaving or energy on demand, I think what is the appropriate amount of money for that? If you're only making 5 cents a day, you're not going to do it. But can the utility afford you to pay $10 a day? And will it be $10 a benefit for them?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's some unanswered questions about vehicle to grid that I just haven't seen answered yet.
Yeah, well, I think we'll be starting to get into that in the future. We had as our keynote this week, the ISO was with us, and we had some interesting questions around storage and understanding as well that distributors are more and more recommending we have storage close to where people live, not just on the solar farms and whatnot. And so, if you think of EVs as a component of that, I think over time we'll definitely be getting more creative with some of these interties, our local interties, instead of always focusing regionally across provinces. So anyways, no, thank you. Very, very interesting to imagine the future here and all these parts linking together and the incentives that would be required to make that feasible. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we've got another great question here. Lewis read that fast charging reduces the life of the battery. Is it so? I think I learned that you should only go up to 80% on the fast charger usually, and then do the last 20 on the slower ones. But you correct me if I'm wrong, William. What's your thought on that?
It does, but it's quite negligible. So there are fleets that operate purely on fast chargers, and they don't show appreciable extra degradation. There's no doubt that there is degradation. I'll put it this way: using a battery will reduce its life, right? Mm-hmm. So, and then higher magnitudes of charging current will reduce their life. Stronger depths of discharge, so taking a lithium-ion battery to 0 and then back up to 100 and then 0 will be worse on the battery than shallow depths of discharge, where you just deplete it from 90 to 80 and then back up to 90. Mm-hmm. And all these things have an effect on its longevity, but I think, and this is something that goes back to the auto manufacturers, your battery is controlled by a BMS, battery management system, and they are all optimizing the design of that battery management system for longevity. The iPhone makers of the world, the Samsungs, they don't optimize that battery for longevity. They optimize it for daily life and for performance. They want your apps to load quickly. They want they want the speed of your phone to maintain constant over time. So they don't care about longevity. Mm-hmm. So it's different design optimizations. And I think really at the end of the day, the thing that your battery cares about is thermal management. And when you fast charge, you can raise the temperature of the battery quite quickly. But these thermal management systems are getting so good at controlling the temperature of individual cells. For those that don't know, that your battery is hermetically sealed and bathing in glycol fluid. And that fluid is thermally managed. It's kept cool if the battery is hot. It's kept warm if the battery is cold. And it just keeps that battery at the ideal temperature. So a lot of these concerns about fast charging frequently or operating it in really hot environments or really cold environments they're not an issue anymore.
Well, that's great to hear. I'm just curious because I always just go to 80 when we're road tripping. Do you go all the way to 100% charge when you're road tripping?
Yeah, and
Okay.
if you're driving like a lithium iron phosphate battery, which is you'll know if you are, your owner's manual will tell you that it's safe to charge to 100%, and they actually recommend you charge to 100%. So
Hmm.
different chemistries can mean different things, but yeah, it's fine to charge to 100%.
Oh, good to know. Well, I'll definitely check our manual and make sure we have that type. So that's good to know. Just adding my own little questions in here on the side. I can't help but pick your brain. Melissa, thanks for joining us. She's wondering, how does battery efficiency decrease for EVs parked outside over winter? Getting a lot of questions about that. Folks with a garage pad as opposed to a garage. Um, does that impact the battery efficiency?
Yeah, a warm battery is more efficient. So if it's sheltered, it will be less exposed to ambient air conditions, and even like, yeah, I'll just say that if you park it outside and you're concerned about that, as long as it's connected to its charger, level 1 or level 2, that'll at least keep the battery warm or fully charged, and it should be fine. But yeah, a colder battery will be slightly less efficient for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, thanks for that. Patrick's got a question here. What does it cost to replace the battery on a Tesla? I think you said the battery will probably outlast the the
Yeah,
body, but if you did have to replace the battery, what would it cost?
yeah, it's difficult to say because well, I will say this. I've seen estimates that are about $9,000 for like a 75 kilowatt hour pack. Um, Years ago, it was about 13. So batteries are on this like exponentially decreasing cost curve. Um, and I think the nature of this question is, yeah, after my 8-year warranty and I have to replace the battery, what's it going to cost me? Well, I would have to project what the cost of batteries will be by then. And since they're on this exponentially decreasing curve, I can tell you that it'll be pretty cheap.
Hmm.
I don't know
Hmm.
how cheap, but it'll be cheap.
And
And
for
and I would
mhm.
view it, sorry, Heather, I
No.
would view it as something that would happen as rare or even rarer than a transmission failure or an engine failure. We all know
Mhm.
how rare those are. Are they substantial costs of maintenance? Yes, they are. You wouldn't want it, but they are exceedingly rare.
Yeah, and as an electric bicycle owner as well, I'm kind of curious whether that things will look similar, when it comes time to fix that up. I think it'll probably be a lot easier and a lot cheaper just because of the nature of the beast, hey?
Yeah, and again I go back to my comparison there. Like an electric bike battery won't have a thermal management system, will be made closer to the grade of a consumer electronic.
Mhm.
So be very cautious when you make comparisons between e-bikes and electric vehicles. Like the quality of these batteries that are going to these EVs is astounding.
In the cars and the buses and whatnot. Yeah. Okay, good to know. Okay, here we go. Insurance. We're always getting questions about insurance. Does your home insurance go up with an EV? I mean, I don't think your home insurer would necessarily know about that, but I guess the question's more around with the charger, really. Does that impact home insurance at all?
No, they never asked me, and my insurer of my vehicle is my car insurer, and they haven't either. So maybe the nature of this question is like the person asking it is concerned about home fires, and potentially they're thinking that will translate to a higher home insurance premium. But EV car fires are rarer than gas vehicle fires. Uh,
Hmm.
so that
And you're taking out all the toxins that could potentially,
yeah,
like you said, you're not going to be sitting there in carbon dioxide and
yeah.
yeah.
And
Hmm.
my car insurance was I'm with TD Melashmonics. They gave an $8 per month discount for driving a green vehicle in recognition of the damage that climate change does to the insurance industry. They have to pay out larger
Yeah,
discount.
generally speaking, insurance industry should be pretty woke with all of this because they're well aware of the impacts of climate change and whatnot. I've heard from some folks having some trouble getting insurance for for their homes with solar arrays, and I'm thinking that's ridiculous. They should want you to have a solar array because it's going to protect your roof. It's going to, I mean, there's so many benefits. But there are a couple that do, obviously, and I'm going to try and encourage them to list on our directory because those that are giving preferential treatment to EV owners and solar, should ideally be listing with us so we can recommend them.
Good idea.
So yeah, Sally is wondering what considerations are required if you do not have a garage for your charger, only a parking pad.
Mm, it should be fine to run a underground 240-volt line to a post and then just mount a weatherproof charging station, of which there are many.
Mhm.
I can rattle off a few at the top of my head: the Flow G9, the Flow X5, the Tesla wall charger, the Grizzly e-charger. Like there are numerous manufacturers that, and you don't have to go fancy with this, Sally. You can put like a 6x6 post in the ground, run that wire up the post, and call her a day. Like it is very simple. I absolutely recommend, if you're on a parking pad, have a level 2 charger, because
Mhm.
your vehicle is exposed to the elements. If you try and rely on a level 1 charger, like just a block heater plug, when it's -40 out, it will not provide enough energy to both keep the battery warm and to charge it. And the only other thing I would say about leaving your vehicle parked outside is, if we ever get freezing rain, it might freeze that charging port. It's got a heater in it in most EVs, but if it's like a ton of freezing rain, I mean, that's a crappy situation to be in. So you can either bring a hairdryer out there to melt it, or they commonly you can find in like specialty EV stores. You can find like a little bag, like a weatherproof bag that kind of goes over the whole thing and keeps your
Mhm.
charge port from freezing up and getting caked with snow and ice.
Yeah, and I mean, if people really can't go level two on a charge on a pad, there's also like I know we had a hybrid EV mix, the original Ionic, and it was fine outdoors just to be plugged in to a regular plug. It would only be electric within town. As soon as you hit the highway, you were on the gas, so it's not ideal. But if you can't, if you can't get that level two charger, then there are some options still to consider as well. So it's
Mhm.
nice to have a variety out there these days. There's so many different options now. Les is wondering, how much does cold weather, like -20 to -40, affect range, both around town, stop and go, and highway?
Mm. In quick answer there is, if in the worst of the worst, like -45 degrees Celsius, your EV will see about a 50% drop in range. Um, the winter average for EV drivers that I talk to is anywhere from 30 to 20% less range throughout the winter time. But keep in mind that no vehicle is exempt from the range penalties of winter. The reason why you get less range in the winter is the air is denser. So your vehicle is an aerodynamic object traveling through air. So whether you're driving a gas vehicle or an EV, you will still hit that penalty. And the roads are slippery and more uneven, and that causes more energy to be expended overcoming that. And then it's just more tricky for, like, when you're cold starting a gas powered vehicle, the lubricants and all the motorized components aren't working at top efficiency. So all those things add up to a penalty for not just gas vehicles, but also EVs. So
Yeah, and
um,
I've
I've
noticed it also depends how warm you want to be, right? Because
yeah,
like it's interesting if I drive in the winter because I like to crank the heat, um, then I will not go as far as my husband who only uses the seat warmer. He insists
yeah.
on only using the seat warmer and the wheel warmer. He doesn't crank the heat because that's his preference. So it's interesting too, just the individual driver, right?
Oh yeah, you can hypermile it, and yeah, you can do things like not turn on your cabin heater if you want. When we look at this conversion concept of gasoline vehicles to EVs, I mean, heat is a byproduct of the internal combustion engine process. With EVs, there's not much. It's so efficient that unfortunately, there's not much heat byproduct to siphon in the wintertime. So yeah, a lot of people love how warm their gas vehicles are in the winter. But in the summertime, they're not complaining about the fact that they're just, sorry to say this, but pissing money out the window
Mhm.
with all the heat that gets generated and isn't useful to them in the summertime. So I do like that about EVs. They're so efficient that it's a penalty in the wintertime to get heat.
Yeah, well, and nowadays there are so many long-range EV options that it's really a non-issue around town because you can still be warm and drive as well if you're used to that in the ICE vehicle, right? If you're used to wasting all that heat or maximizing it as the case may be. So Mark is saying here, as most of the ICE tail, and for those who don't know the term ICE, internal combustion engine, right? That's the acronym.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure because I know when I first joined the electric vehicle discussions, everyone kept saying ICE, 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 and I'd never heard that term before, but it really refers to gas-powered cars. So it's good to clarify for anyone who's new here. As most of the ICE tailpipe emissions are CO2 and water with some priority pollutants, are there any studies regarding icing of roads in a cold climate and the benefits that EVs might provide? So the broader benefits of EVs to
Not that I'm
roads.
aware. No, not that I'm aware.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is EVs are so relatively new, especially to cold climates. Like I noticed that a lot of them haven't been designed with um, colder climates in mind. So they're just kind of playing catch up now. That was really evident actually, because when we got our Ionic, it has the lane uh,
Assist.
automation.
Yeah.
And I had to turn all that off because it didn't understand snow. And it kept saying, you're not in the lane, you're not in the lane. And I said, it's snowy. And we imagine our lanes here. And and then I realized, oh, this has certainly not been developed in Canada. So there'll be a ways to go, I think, before we have a lot of that research.
Yeah.
Oh, Guy, one of our longtime members is here. Welcome, Guy. What about renters in apartments and condos? How do they go about getting chargers set up? So that whole multifamily dynamic, yeah, lots of questions about that lately. I've heard in Vancouver, you can't, I think it's Vancouver, you can't actually establish a new apartment building if you're not putting EV chargers in. But I'm not sure. I don't think Edmonton's that far along yet, though.
Yeah, we're a jurisdiction that's kind of behind for new builds. You are correct that there are some jurisdictions like Ontario and BC that are becoming more friendly and mandating that they either be EV ready or EV capable parking stalls inside multi-unit residential buildings. For brownfield, like existing residential, multi-unit residential buildings, it can be quite difficult. You have two options essentially. You can either rely on a fast charger that's nearby or a level 2 charger that's nearby, not the ideal situation. Or you can just approach your board and petition them to install one. They may ask that the common portions get paid by the reserve fund, and then the dedicated portion is paid by you. Or they have different models. They can assign visitor stalls as a charging stall. There's a lot of different options. I think one of the best things to do is get in touch with a company that provides EV charging installation services, and they can help walk your board through it. And as EVs become more popular in Alberta, boards are getting more knowledgeable and competent with the issue.
Yeah, we're certainly working with some condo association folks looking at putting together some more information on solar for condos, and we might need to tuck in more of that EV information as well and do a little of both. We do have a number of members with Solar Alberta who do EV chargers, so folks can check out our directory and find all the EV charging experts there as well, as I'm sure EVAA knows a number as well. We are almost at time here, but William has offered very kindly to stay a couple of minutes late. So I'm still not going to push it too far, but I'm going to try and take another 3 questions here. And so if you do have to leave on the hour, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Hope you're coming tonight for the networking hour. But I am going to ask a couple more questions here since you're generously providing extra time. David is asking, for fleet/multifamily parking, do you work with any vendors that use an energy management system to load shed during peak demand or balance charging between stations?
That is my job.
Okay.
So if you are interested in that, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Okay. So yes, the answer is yes. And check in during your regular 9 to 5.
Yes.
Sounds good. Thank you. And Gordon, would you consider your EV to be the best winter car that you've ever owned? Why or why not? I can also answer that hands down, yes. How about
Yeah.
you, William?
Yeah, and I glossed over this, but the traction control systems in electric vehicles are also incredible too. And there's two reasons for that. The only two things you care about in a traction control system are precision and responsiveness. You can't get more precise than an electric motor. There's literally no precise instrument that moves that relies on a gas engine. Like no surgical instrument is using a gas engine to do that. And then responsiveness, it all moves at the speed of light inside an electronic circuit. So
Yeah,
you can't beat
really
that.
amazing. Well,
Yeah.
and I would say for mine, I'm going to actually go back to your drive-through example that you didn't relate to, but holy smokes, did I used to ever feel guilty or freezing in the winter. So, driving around, just picking up my kids, I used to force myself to just sit there and not idle and freeze. I was so cold. And now if I have to pick up my kids from something, or even if I'm waiting for a half an hour outside of guitar lesson, I just listen there. You can put the fireplace channel on. I've got my podcast going. I mean, I'm having a good time and feeling zero guilt because I'm not emitting anything to, the folks walking by. And yeah, and because I'm charging on my solar at home, I don't even feel guilty that I'm drawing on the grid. So, which I acknowledge is still cleaner than an ICE vehicle, but yeah, it's nicer if you can go solar. So yeah, for me, it's the guilt factor in winter. I used to have a lot of it, and I used to make myself very uncomfortable. And I
Yeah.
would, some days I would walk places just because I was so guilty about driving when it didn't make any sense, none at all. And now, my son was having an asthma attack the other day. And in the past, I would have felt so guilty driving to help him out. And I had zero guilt. I just hopped in my car, took off, grabbed him in 5 minutes. And anyways, so I'm really glad you touched on that because
Yeah,
sometimes it's those little things, right? You can't even quantify it.
it is. Yes. Yeah.
Hmm. But I don't know if that was what Gordon was going for, but he did ask why. So there you go. Jesse, welcome, Jesse. Jesse with the coolest house in town. Although you've got some competitors coming your way. We've definitely got a lot of neat deep energy retrofits on the go around Alberta right now. So Jesse's asking, do you know if there are any planned 100 kilowatt plus CCS fast chargers for the Edmonton area? Um, that is a good question.
Yeah. They're coming.
They're coming. You're going to give us any hints where?
Can't.
Can't say. I know we just got a free charger here in Blatchford and I am overjoyed. It's been so lovely to get a free charger, but I don't think it hits the quite the mark that Jesse's looking for. Still
Yeah.
takes us about a half hour, 45 if we're
For a
really
meaningful
low.
charge. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But that's fine and it's free and I'm thankful. I don't know how long it'll be free here for. Any conversations being had on incentives for ICE to EV conversions or personal vehicles or fleet vehicles? I was actually really wondering about that in the context of what's it called? Sunk assets? What is that the term for it? When something is like, because I was thinking, what about people who like buy an ICE vehicle in the next 10 years?
Stranded
They're
asset.
stranded assets. I thought anybody buying a new ICE vehicle is buying a stranded asset, really, because who on earth
We'll buy
after
it
after 20, 30, nobody's going to buy it off them. So
Yeah.
I thought, gosh, they're going to have to convert it because nobody's going to want to buy them.
Mm.
So it's a good question. Do you think that there's a rescue plan for all these stranded assets?
I think there will never be a conversion fund. And I wouldn't recommend converting any vehicle to electric unless it was an antique or had extreme sentimental value to the owner. There are no provincial rebates. There is a provincial election coming up, and I think we know which political party is more likely to support rebates for electric vehicles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, rebates for electric vehicles are a touchy point, and for conversion in particular, I'm not sure. There are those who do it for fun, though. I certainly know that there are
Yes.
some folks on the line today from various state, NATE, and other programs who are just happily nerding out converting things. So,
I don't knock it. It's just not the, I'm all about scale and what's going to take us to fix climate change. And it's not converting 2015 Hyundai Sonata to an
mhm,
electric. Like that
mhm.
vehicle has already depreciated to basically nothing in value, and it doesn't make sense to spend $20,000 converting it.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
All right, I feel like we need to wrap up pretty soon here. So I think I already said I would do three and I've gone over. So I'll just do this one last one from Keith, and anyone else can follow up with you after. William, maybe you could pop your EVAA contact info in the chat, or your work, if you're comfortable sharing your work email, but I think you mentioned LinkedIn would be the best way for that. So Keith is asking, how soon till we see a movement to conversion of, oh, we just answered that one. Okay, I better answer a different one because that was the exact one. We've got Kathleen wondering about, is there a plan for lithium storage? I'm not sure if you're prepared to comment on that one today. Any thoughts on lithium storage?
Lithium storage, like lithium ion technology for stationary storage batteries?
Yeah, she says, is there a plan for lithium storage? I'm not sure beyond that.
Shortage.
Oh, shortage. You can tell it's the last session of the day because I'm just not even noticing the H there. Thank you.
Yeah, actually there is. So most of the world's, okay, so lithium is not a conflict mineral. Cobalt is. And so we can't conflate those two. There are human rights issues with the sourcing of cobalt. However, if you look closer into it, it gets complicated. And I don't think any lithium ion battery in the world that has cobalt in it is actually produced ethically. There are many experts that have ruled on that subject and found that there is not an ethical way to source cobalt for the most part. When it comes to lithium, a lot of it comes from Australia and Chile. However, there are companies that are working on a new extraction technology. So much of the world's lithium is in brine, which means basically salty water, like it's dissolved in water. And so in Chile, they take it out of its very high concentrations. They pump it out of the aquifer and they put it in a salar field and they let that dry, and then they just scoop it up and go and refine it. There are aquifers though that have much lower concentrations of lithium brine, and these reservoirs are actually located, many of them, in Alberta. So the Leduc aquifer, which is just underneath Leduc in 1947, that's where oil was first discovered by Imperial Oil, has 6.7 million tons of lithium in it, which is like, it's a massive reservoir. It is the 7th largest known reservoir in the world. And then there's lithium in Saskatchewan, there's lithium in the Valley View area, there's lithium all over the province of Alberta. And there are companies that are actively working on a technology called direct lithium extraction, where essentially they drill a well hole into the aquifer, and they pump out the lithium brine, and they let it trickle through a cylinder that has beads in it.
Mm-hmm.
And these beads have an affinity for the lithium ion atom. And then they wash the beads off and they refine the lithium and put it into an electric vehicle battery. And they pump the water back into the aquifer. So it's a closed loop system. It has a net zero impact on the environment. And the aquifer is super far down in the earth. It's like 400 feet below the surface. And it's massive. It's 43 kilometers in length and about as tall as the Eiffel Tower.
And we don't have to decapitate any mountains in the Rockies to get it, hey?
No.
Well, that's novel.
So direct lithium extraction will probably be
Wow.
the technology that addresses the lithium shortage.
Very cool, very cool. You know, William, that makes me think there's been this whole discussion about whether we're allowed to talk about energy transition or not in the country right now. And it's fascinating because I think if you look at the economics of it and the resources that are available here, this transition is happening whether or not any politician wants to sign on for it, because it's just good economic sense if you've got all those resources to make it happen. So
yeah, I will say though that I do think this is the oil of the future. Solar energy, wind energy, and battery electric vehicles and batteries. And Canada has a lot of these critical minerals for these technologies, and we can be a powerhouse of the manufacturing. And this is related to our national energy sovereignty. and the government needs to be doing more to enable this industry, because we cannot let it go to other countries. It needs to be our resources, it needs to be our manufacturing, because it is critically important.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And I think on that note, actually, I want to quote you on that, and I think we should end there because you spoke that so perfectly.